Hey, I'm Nate Mitchell. I'm
really glad to be in Texas. We're having a lot of fun, eating good food. Texas, lots of great things. Good weather sometimes. Low taxes always. So we're going to keep this pretty informal. We're going to do a short presentation to kind of give context to Q&A, and then we're going to spend the majority of our time on Q&A. So we're live streaming this right now. So we're going to have a microphone passing around the audience, and then we're also going to have be taking questions from Twitter. And if you want to ask us questions, the hashtag is Oculus South by Southwest. Yeah, there we go. All right. So raise your hand if you've tried the Rift. That's most people. Yay! Come on, clap. Come on. All right, raise your hand if you backed our Kickstarter. A smaller number of people, but clap louder for them, because without them, this never would have been possible. We never would have gotten to where we are. Man, Kickstarter's great. So today we're going to be talking about virtual reality, why it's the future, why it's coming, and why it's going to change everything. And if there's one thing you take away from this talk, it is that virtual reality is coming, and it's going to change the world. I like to think of virtual reality like a black hole. And we're all in a spaceship, and we're crossing the event horizon. And we're all being hopelessly pulled towards this black hole, and pretty soon nobody's going to be able to escape, even if they hate virtual reality. So I hope you like virtual reality. Which picture? The picture on your right is actually a picture from last year's South by Southwest. We were at a table over there with one hand-built prototype before we started shipping developer kits. So we just wanted to share that with people.
Come a long way.
It's come a long way since then. So virtual reality allows you to feel like you're inside of a virtual world, like you're actually in a virtual space, and nothing that you've ever tried is really like virtual reality. That's not to say VR is the best thing you've ever tried, but nothing you've ever tried is like it. And it's going to change entertainment, not just video games, but a lot of other things. Film, education, television, education, communication, television. It will allow us to be anywhere and experience anything. And I think that gives artists and content creators a lot of artistic freedom to do things that never would have been possible. Not just virtual reality specific, but also emulating other mediums, at least once virtual reality gets good enough that it can do so sufficiently well. For example, you can imagine that it's a lot more fun to watch gravity from outer space than watching it happen on a screen. And would you rather read a book about dinosaurs or virtually travel back in time and see dinosaurs at life's skies? I like dinosaur books as well, but I'd rather see dinosaurs in virtual reality. Oh, Jurassic Park, anyone? Is in my notes. See? They thought it was funny. So presence is the magic of virtual reality. The idea that you're making your brain, not just on a conscious level, but on a subconscious level, believe that it's in a virtual environment. And that's something that no other technology can really do. On a conscious level, you may forget that you're not in the real world, but you're never going to trick the deep subsystems of your brain into believing that you're truly in danger, like you can do with virtual reality. You have to see it to understand it. And we have a demo at a nearby loft thing that you can come and check it out, and we'll give you the address later. So most of you seem to know what the Rift is anyways, but in case you just sat in your chair from the last panel, rest your feet. The Rift is a consumer virtual reality headset that makes you feel like you're inside the game. We're currently shipping developer kits. We've sold about 50,000 of them. Developer kits are for content creators that want to start making VR experiences right now, even though the consumer hardware isn't ready. The number one question we get is, when will the consumer Rift ship? We have not announced anything, and we don't plan on announcing anything today. I'm sorry. But we do plan on making the consumer Rift the best virtual reality system of all time, so it will be worth the wait. And it's interesting because virtual reality in the past has kind of been limited to research labs, military installations, Fortune 500 companies doing CAD work, oil drilling visualization. It's never been a consumer technology or even a artistic technology. But in the last year, since we've started shipping dev kits, there's been a huge explosion in VR content. There's actually been more made for VR content in the last year than the last 20 years combined. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of titles. And even at South by Southwest, there's quite a few games. I put 3 up here, but I actually walked around and found a couple more. So, and it's not just indie games, although indies have been doing, I think, some of the most interesting things with the Rift. even huge franchises like Game of Thrones are experimenting with virtual reality. And I think it shows how far things have come in just a couple of years to go from, research laboratories to massive franchises that millions and millions of people are interested in. It's really incredible. This is only the beginning. VR's primitive right now. It's not anywhere close to where we want it to be. It's not that close to the Matrix, but we're already able to do things that no other technology can do. And there's going to be some massive advances in the next 5 to 10 years in resolution, performance, latency, input, getting your body into the game, and it's going to be a really exciting time. So if you want to see the Rift, we're showing it off at the loft at this address. Everyone pull out your phones and take a picture. You got like 10 seconds while I'm talking. People have been at the loft all day, and we kind of managed the line in a weird way where it ended up that everyone's outside standing in the rain for hours. And that's kind of sad, but we're really sorry if anyone in this room has stood in the rain. We didn't mean for that to happen. We'll bring like tarps something next year, tarps and PVC. Yeah. We'll figure it out. We're engineers. Before we get into Q&A, one last thing. We're hiring, not just at our Irvine headquarters, but also at our Dallas and San Francisco offices. So if any of you guys are the best around, let us know, and we want to work with you. In fact, Ryan, tell them.
So last year, standing right over there, I gave Palmer a business card, and a week later, he asked me for a resume, and a month later, I had a new job. So South by Southwest is definitely an interesting place to get a new job as a hardware engineer, but it worked out pretty well.
And isn't it fun to work at Oculus? Aren't the benefits in healthcare competitive?
Why, yes, they are, Palmer.
We don't discriminate against Texans. We love them. All right, so we're going to go into live Q&A. We're going to pass the microphone around, and we're going to be taking questions on Twitter. Some of them selected just before we came on stage. Some of them selected live. We're still kind of figuring out how that's going to work. So bear with us. Ask us about anything you want.
Yeah, so we were going to just open it up. We wanted most of this to just be an open discussion with you guys about anything. And we've asked the Twitter and like Reddit, subreddit to bring a bunch of questions. So people are still tweeting like crazy at us, and we'll take some of those, but I thought we'd start with some from the audience. And you guys can ask us about pretty much anything. We'll do our best. So software, hardware, startups, Kickstarter, manufacturing, the Rift, the future of virtual reality, games, anything you guys want. So let's do it. Let's start with some audience questions. Sure, right there.
Hey guys. As far as UX design goes and looking at how interfaces in 3D and virtual reality goes, have you found people interacting with the Rift and with your dev kits and getting out in the wild? What changes to, I guess, user interface design and UX do you see coming through 3D?
This guy.
So user interface design in VR can be challenging, especially if you're coming from sort of a 2D medium, like if you're a web developer or a mobile developer. Generally what we say is you want to think about user interfaces the same way you interact with UIs or interfaces in real life. So, there's a lot of putting things inside the world. Everything's 3D, so you're generally floating screens in space if you do want to do 2D UI, or maybe you have something much more interactive. If you've seen a lot of the concept videos around like AR UI, augmented reality user interfaces, where you like pick up a glass and it says like how full the glass is and what's in the glass and all that stuff, and it tracks perfectly. That's stuff that you can actually do in virtual reality right now. And so that's where the most interesting innovation's happening for VR UI, I'd say. Some people are just sticking things to your face, sort of like Google Glass style. It's not great.
Just to add on to that, there are a lot of interesting things that people have done in like movie visualizations for what they think augmented reality will look like. And some of those are, cool, bringing things out into the world and having physical 3D models. But like Nate said, you want to try to make those interactions as close to real world interactions as possible in most cases. And if you look at movie interactions, it's more like,
that ends up being very difficult to do in VR.
They're not the interactions that people like to do. I mean, there's a reason that mice have caught on. It's because they're a superhuman interface that allows us to conserve a lot of energy. And we like to conserve energy as people. We don't make cool, sweeping, beautiful cinematic movements most of the time.
Yep.
So be aware of that. Look at movies for inspiration and AR stuff for inspiration, but don't make like like Iron Man stuff is actually not that good. We've tried.
Yeah, if you very quickly, if you mess around with like Leap Motion or something like that, you'll find that it is hard. There's generally no defined gesture, interface for all these things. So every program does it differently, and your arms get tired waving around in space. And so, one of the big questions that I'm sure will come up at some point during this panel is VR input. And that's a big question mark in terms of what should the UI look like. Really, it depends on the input. And input is still, there's a lot of question marks there. Good question.
So guys, why do you think, why now? Why is it going to happen now? Because 20 years ago, virtuality was around. I mean, Disney's Gator Vision, right, with the Aladdin game. I mean, that's a really great VR platform. I love that stuff. Why is it going to happen now and it didn't happen then?
We had a Dactyl Nightmare screenshot in this presentation deck at one point, but we cut it at the last minute. Palmer, you want to take it away?
The main issue is that the technology wasn't, well, there's two. One, it was really, really expensive. Those Dactyl Nightmare, all the virtuality units were tens of thousands of dollars each. And the Disney Quest stuff was super cool. The Aladdin ride was very cool, but that headset cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop, and they were a few tens of thousands each. They were using custom CRTs, carbon fiber shells, and that crazy spring balance system. And the other thing is the quality really was not up to where it could be a consumer product. It could be a research product. It could be something that did very interesting things. That's why people have been using virtual reality for research. But it's only pretty recently that we've had mobile displays kind of driving this revolution where we have very high pixel density displays that are a reasonable size to be magnified for VR. They're very lightweight, very low cost. Same thing with motion tracking. But back then, a lot of motion tracking was done mechanically, or the virtuality units were using magnetic tracking, and that worked actually okay for virtuality because you were standing up and they had such a wide base that it isolated you from any ferrous objects in the environment, and you could calibrate against that distortion and have it work okay. But it's not good enough for a consumer solution where it's going to be planted in a lot of different places with a lot of different environments. So that leaves you with optical tracking, and then they did have some inertial tracking back then, but it wasn't nearly as cheap and of the order of magnitude less precise than what we have today. And I think the biggest part, aside from VR, no matter how good people had built their VR hardware at the time, the computing power has never really been there. Today, the average person's PC or even a couple $100 console can render not photorealistic, but a pretty good looking 3D environment. If you look at the virtuality systems or any of those old systems back then, they were not rendering anything near photorealism, certainly not at a high frame rate. And I'm sure there are cool things you could do. You could render a wireframe environment at high frame rates in 3D, but it isn't the kind of thing that consumers would latch onto. And that's one of the reasons that professional virtual reality has kind of focused on CAD and model design, and there's a lot of oil companies that use it for data visualization, but these are very simplistic graphics that they're rendering, not game type environments, and consumers, like it or not, demand pretty things. Does that pretty much answer your question?
I think one thing to add to that, a quote I like from Chris Anderson is we're all benefiting from what he calls the peace dividend of the cell phone war. So everything that we've packaged and put in these HMDs, like Palmer mentioned, comes from the miniaturization and the commoditization of these cell phone components. Same thing that's enabled his business, 3D robotics.
All right, so we're going to take a question from Twitter. We got Joe Chen somewhere, who's an Oculus employee, one of our product leads, sending me Twitter questions. So a question from eFineGold21 on Twitter was, other than games and entertainment, do you think, what other industries other than games and entertainment do you think may be disrupted by virtual reality and the Oculus Rift?
I'm excited about architecture. I'm in my spare time, I enjoy looking at modern architecture and learning more about it. And many of the architects and designers I know really feel like it makes a huge difference to show a client a space with the accurate scaling and feel of being in it rather than seeing a rendering on a screen.
David in Florence, like in an education setting, will be a major thing.
This may surprise you. I also am excited about education. I think that modern education in a lot of ways is broken. We teach people about things by having them read words on a piece of paper or look at flat pictures on a board. And we've clearly decided that in many cases there is benefit to sending people on field trips and doing things hands-on. but there's so many time and resource restraints on doing that. You can't send every class of middle school kids to go to the museum to see dinosaurs every day. You can't send them to ancient Rome to look at ruins. There's a lot of things you just can't do because they're not cost effective or time effective. I mean, field trips, how much time do you spend eating lunch and getting shoved around and walking around in lines versus actually learning anything? And also, a lot of times people don't want to learn anything, and that doesn't help either. But with virtual reality, if you can easily have people who are already in the classroom and instantly transport them somewhere and have them do something that gives them a really visual, deep understanding of something as if they're actually witnessing it, and then instantly bring them back. You're not wasting resources, you're not wasting time, and you're adding a lot to education.
Yeah.
So
I think one other quick one is definitely communication. I think VR is going to bring the world together in a big, big way. If you think about where we are today with like cell phone technology and Skype and FaceTime, really being able to have almost a face-to-face level conversation in VR. This is going to be 5 years down the road, but when you have eye tracking, mouth tracking, hand tracking, and you can get all the body language that I'm displaying up here, and we can all have this conference, this exact panel in virtual reality, that's going to be really powerful.
I'll even go further than that. Once it gets good enough, there's almost little reason to see people in real life on a regular basis. Well, I mean, it's true. We drag ourselves on business trips and to go to conferences and even just get-togethers to see with people. A lot of people spend more time talking to their friends on Facebook and on Skype than they do in real life, but they still get together in real life from time to time to participate in structured activities and hanging out, because that's the only way to really emote to people, to connect with them, and to have body language and really natural communication schemes between people. But when virtual reality gets good enough, when I'm assuming perfect virtual reality here, not the primitive stuff we have today, assuming perfect virtual reality where you can communicate with the same realism you could in real life, how are you going to justify using the resources to drag everyone together to do these kinds of things when you can do it so easily with virtual reality? It's going to be an exciting time. It will allow us to combine the best of digital communication with the best of human communication. And there's never been anything that comes close to that, except for like telepathy.
But we're happy to be here with you guys today.
Today. But tomorrow.
Let's take another question from the audience. I don't know who has the microphone. Sure.
Hey, I have a...
Stand up. Oh, there you are.
Back here. Hey, guys.
Hello.
How y'all doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Great,
Doing
thanks.
well.
All right, all right. I just had a couple of questions. I just wanted to kind of start off by saying big fan. I'm a developer and working on trying to put something together. But what are some of the biggest issues and most creative fixes you've seen for VR sickness and a lot of that cross-eyed effect that a lot of people tend to get?
Cross-eye effect. Let's knock that one right off. If you're cross-eyed, then something is either done wrong in the software or in the calibration. One of the issues that we have with public demos is that we show it without any kind of calibration whatsoever. We just have a generic profile that works pretty well for everyone. If you actually have a Rift, there's a calibration tool where you can put in all kinds of things like we have a tool that allows you to measure your interpupillary distance, the distance between your eyes, your height, your gender, and all of those other things that allow us to have a better model of what you should be seeing and how you should be moving in the virtual environment. So if you're getting cross-eyed and you haven't run through the calibration, that's one of the possible causes. If there's a large disparity between, if you have really narrow eyes or really wide eyes and you're using the generic profile, you might experience that a little bit. I have pretty wide eyes. I'm a 69.5 millimeter IPD, which it's up there. Nate, what are you?
I don't remember.
Nate doesn't remember. But so that's the cross-eyed part. As far as creative things for simulator sickness, Nate?
We just put out the Oculus Best Practices guide that has a bunch of stuff for sort of trying to avoid simulator sickness. There's definitely on content creation and just educating content creators on building their content in such a way that people talk about virtual reality and then they're like, why does it make me, why did this experience make me dizzy? And it's the experience they did generally is something like a roller coaster, or they were flying a spaceship and doing barrel rolls nonstop, and then they're like, so why was I dizzy? So, well, your brain thinks you're actually there and it's responding as if you were actually there, and therefore you feel dizzy.
And then like that's one of the reasons we talk about why porting games to virtual reality is hard. When you have a game that's displayed on a traditional monitor or a television, you can get away with a lot of things you cannot get away with in VR. You can shake the screen, you can do continuous barrel rolls, but no matter how good we make our hardware, no matter how good we make our core software, there's always going to be experiences that make you sick. There's no way to get around that. And if you just take an experience that ignored all the limitations of the human mind and body and throw it into the Rift, you're going to have a bad time.
And just one quick last part to that question. Feel free not to answer this if it's against whatever, but do you have any idea on when the HD developer kits might be rolling out?
Yeah, we do.
Would you be so wonderful as to share?
Sorry, next question.
No, we can't.
I think there was someone in the middle here.
Hey, how you doing? It's kind of a two-part question. So there was a couple articles recently, one on Kotaku about you guys potentially running out of materials to make the headsets. And the other question is about Gizmodo just ran an article about Apple trying to patent sort of the same idea. I was just wondering if you guys have responded to either of those yet, and if you kind of know like what the future of the hardware is, and if there have any concerns.
So we can't comment on patent type stuff, but as far as the component supplying thing,
It's not a potential thing, it happened.
yeah, exactly. So basically, you have to order parts way ahead of time, and there's massive lead times for components, and so we were constantly estimating how many development kits we thought we'd sell. When we started the company, in fact, I guessed that we'd sell 10,000 development kits. So we've crossed, I believe, the 60,000 development kit mark, and basically the components were end of life a long time ago. Many of the components, including the display, so they just aren't being produced anymore. And so with that in mind, we can't actually manufacture more units right now. And if we theoretically could, but we'd have to manufacture them at a pretty heavy loss because we'd be buying the components like secondhand refurbished, and it wouldn't be a good experience for anyone.
And even that has limits. There's only so many of them out there you can get, and a lot of them are lower quality components that have been binned.
Yeah.
And we could potentially re-engineer the device to work with different components, but that's a really tricky thing to do at this stage in its lifespan.
Yep. Right? So we have some ideas on how we're going to address that in the near future, and we'll have announcements in the next few weeks. Go.
Ryan had something to add.
No, I think as a hardware engineer, especially something that's a couple years out, maintaining that quality through changing vendors is something that's very time-consuming to validate. And so, like Palmer said, we're very concerned with maintaining the level of quality that we've achieved with the DK1 with our current manufacturing line, and not going beyond that in order to squeak out a few more units.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna jump to one or two questions from Twitter, and then we'll jump back. So Jay Mentor on Twitter, now that position tracking and low persistence are more or less solved, what's the single biggest known obstacle for awesome VR? And just real quick, for those of you that don't know, the Crystal Cove prototype that we showed at CES, which won Best of CES from a number of outlets, including the official awards, it included positional tracking, which is the ability to move through space, like leaning left and right. So with the original dev kit, you couldn't like lean around a corner. Nothing happened. The world just moved with you. So now we support that with Crystal Cove. And then low persistence is a display technology that makes the experience much more realistic and more comfortable. So Palmer, do you want to take a stab, or maybe Ryan, you do?
Yeah.
We can all take a stab if you want.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. The biggest remaining challenge, at least from my perspective, is we have this saying around the office is we build prototypes very quickly. We have a lot of different things kind of going on in parallel, and something may look really good in isolation on the bench or in kind of a vertical slice demo, but we really have to try everything in total in VR to know whether we've made an improvement or taken a step back. And so I think, as opposed to some of the other projects I've worked on, having this kind of holistic approach to validating whether something actually has been an improvement is extremely difficult and time-consuming from an R&D perspective. So I think the way that everything plays in, the optics, the ergonomics, the way the circuitry, where everything goes, I think once we kind of know how to do the different components, pulling that all together in a way that is a net positive for VR is very difficult.
And to add on to that, the premise of the question was, now that we've solved low persistence and positional tracking, I'd say they're not necessarily solved. we have them working, and like Ryan said, it's easy to get something working on a bench or working in isolation or working in a rigged CES room that we've spent several days making sure that everything works.
Hey.
Well, I mean, it's true. It's true. We had to adjust a lot of things to make sure that it worked in that one environment. But it takes a long time to go from we have a working demo that works in this one environment to we have something that is cheap, reliable, and will work in everyone's homes without any failure points. And that's one of the reasons this kind of development takes so long. It's hard to evaluate some of these failure conditions. Some of them are very hard to predict. And some people imagine like, oh, look, they got it working. They can ship it now. If we shipped it, it would be a terrible product because it does fall apart in a lot of scenarios. We know how to fix a lot of them. We are working on fixing others. But those are really tough things. I'd say that the next big obstacle is going to be input. Input is something that has not really been tackled in a big way in VR.
Yeah, I was going to agree on input. And as far as I think what Palmer was just saying is definitely crucial to understand in terms of the development kit phase. So, we've been shipping dev kits for a long time, and people constantly ask, like, when's the consumer version coming? I think what Palmer was just talking about is really critical in that the consumer version will be this awesome, great experience that really everyone can enjoy, that any of us can pick up, unbox, plug in, and rock and roll. But with the dev kit, even today with, the Crystal Cove prototype, it's a bit of, it's madness. You're plugging in all sorts of cables. Crystal Cove is even actually
harder than the first dev kit in some ways because it has extra parts.
So we really want to make sure the consumer version is great. So with the development kit, when you buy one, even the original development kit, you definitely are suffering through the process with us and helping us make it better and getting to the finish line. So thank you.
Twitter
all right, so
audience.
What?
Twitter or audience?
We'll go one more Twitter. Joe, I am not reading hip chat. VR input is here. VR input is a challenge, which is why Oculus should be the one to tackle it. Progress towards input, is it a priority?
Yes, it is a priority, and we're making progress. I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. We're not going to, go out and spill all the beans, but, it is a big thing, and the inputs that we have right now, it's practical to use a gamepad. People have them. You can use them when you can't see it, which is the case when you're wearing something strapped to your head. But a gamepad or a keyboard and mouse or really anything on the market right now, we don't think are the best solutions to virtual reality input. There's a lot that can be done to improve, and we are doing a lot of work in that.
All right, let's jump to the audience. I see someone has a mic straight back there. It's really hard for me to see, so if the people helping
You're
run
kind
everything.
of at the mercy of the mic jockey.
Yeah,
people.
exactly.
Thanks. My name is Simon Solodko. I've worked on the STEM and on the Omni. I consider myself knowledgeable, but I'm very confounded by mobility. So AR, augmented reality, is traditionally thought of as kind of a mobile app. VR, people see in desktop contexts. Would you opine and help us understand when VR and mobility come together, and what are the contributing elements?
Could you opine on what you mean by mobility?
Mobile phones being the primary device by which I play a VR game.
Got it.
I can take a shot.
No, I want to take a shot. That is the future. The future is going to be embedded chipsets embedded into the headset that don't require a link to any kind of external hardware. And it's going to become possible. I don't know when. It's hard to predict when. But mobile GPUs have been getting faster very, very quickly. Every year, huge increases. I'd say within the decade, certainly there's going to be mobile devices that are as powerful as the top-of-the-line PCs of today. And if that happens, we're going to have some great VR experiences happening on mobile. Potentially even before then, we're going to see some basic functionality that's enabled by mobile chipsets. Maybe you're not able to run top-of-the-line games at maximum graphical settings, but you can do things like browse the internet or watch movies or play simplistic games or do communication. Perhaps you can run things like chat rooms and things like that on a lower-end mobile processor. That's not going to happen for the first consumer Rift. It's not that close. Don't expect a huge breakthrough there, but it's
Just before your show starts, I've got a feast for your eyes. With the $5.95 value meal at Subway, you've got unreal choice at an unreal price. You choose between 6 Subway 6-inch subs, plus a regular cup drink and your choice of cookie. So many options, so much choice. What's yours? Just before your show starts, I've got a feast for your eyes. With the $5.95 value meal at Subway, you've got unreal choice at an unreal price. You choose between 6 Subway 6-inch subs, plus a regular cup drink and your choice of cookie. So many options, so much choice. What's yours?
Android device. So that's all possible today, and you're going to see, I think, some of that happen very quickly, whether it's us or some of the other companies in the space messing with Android, because there's a lot of companies focused on Android primarily. High-end VR is going to be restricted to the high-end PC side of things generally, because the PC industry is going to move so fast, and VR is still in its infancy. So we are going to continue to consume all the GPU and CPU power that you'll let us. Virtual reality just wants it, it craves it, and we can do so much more with it. So low-end, simplistic experiences you can have on Android mobile set today. Long-term, hopefully that's all going to align, and you'll be able to have all that running off a phone, either in the headset or elsewhere.
But it is the future.
Yeah. Oh, yep.
So in the process of watching your product grow and seeing what other people do and post on YouTube and stuff, titles like gaming titles that are out now or that have been released in the past or coming down the pike, what's one title for each of you, I guess, that you would want to see being used with the Oculus?
To clarify, titles that are already being adapted or that have not yet been announced to be adapted?
I think just in general, Palmer.
In general, either any game from like the 80s now or being,
I know
announced.
What
to be clear, we're not talking about, can you have inspired things? Like what if I want Pac-Man VR? Are we talking about actually Pac-Man, or is it a new reimagined Pac-Man?
Whatever you want.
Oh, wow.
The golden ticket.
You first, Nate.
God, I just had mine. Oh yeah, I would be really interested, and I actually was talking to the Telltale guys right before this. I'd be really interested in seeing some of the Telltale titles in VR. I think interactive storytelling is going to be awesome. The way you can connect with characters and NPCs in VR. When you look and you look at a character in VR, it does feel like it's another person. And there's this weird subconscious connection that happens, and it's really hard to describe what presence is like. You just have to try it. Most people try some of the demos in our office or Crystal Cove, and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know any technology like this existed. So when you can do all that, interactive storytelling becomes that much more powerful, and I'd love to see like The Walking Dead or the new Borderlands thing that they were just talking about in VR. I think that'd be so cool.
I don't mean to take the easy way out, but I've got kids, so I think the Minecraft or the Minecraft that's out today is really compelling, and potentially with more of the kind of human interaction aspects, it'll be even more so. But building things together is something that all of us engineers like to do, and so I think that's a great avenue for VR.
I think in the Minecraft, so Minecraft is a mod that's out now for Minecraft, so you can play multiplayer in VR. And it is pretty incredible to build something in VR and then like look up at your creation at scale and be like, oh my God, this is just nuts. Or diving through caves, like subterranean caverns, things attacking you. And one of our guys in the office stopped playing it. He said it was too scary. The skeleton like shoots him with an arrow. He's like, oh my God. So it's very cool.
So I have a lifelong dream. It's something I've been passionate about since I was a kid, and I think virtual reality could really enable it. I've always wanted to be a Pokemon master, and that's really what I want to do. I want to play an incredible virtual reality Pokemon MMO. If I got my golden ticket, that's where it's taking me. I'm gonna catch them all. I'm gonna battle all of my friends. I'm gonna meet whatever the vague definition of a Pokemon master is.
I would join him there. Next question from the audience.
Am I on?
I can't see who has any mics, so...
Right here.
Oh, there, straight ahead, sorry.
Do you guys have any thoughts on virtual retinal display as opposed to screens?
Can you speak up?
Do you have any thoughts on virtual retinal display as opposed to screens?
Uh-oh.
Could you elaborate what you mean by a virtual retinal display?
Just projecting directly on the retina.
Virtual retinal displays are likely to be it's one of the most promising technologies for the future of virtual reality. Unfortunately, nobody has made a virtual retinal display that works in any consumer capacity. There's been some confusion over what a virtual retinal display is with certain companies. But the idea of having a coherent light beam scanned onto the back of your eye and using persistence of vision to fill it in, it's a very good one. And I think that It's going to enable wide field of views, very high contrast, very high refresh rates, and potentially you can do really cool stuff like actually tracking the eye and then doing real-time ray tracing that actually follows the path of the projection beam. But we're many years away from technology like that becoming practical.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question, or want to elaborate anymore? Oh, did the microphone go away?
No, yeah, we got one right here.
Have either of you two heard of Dolby Vision?
Yeah.
Is that something on the radar with like headsets? Maybe not, the first consumer version, but next couple years. Because I think that as far as things that are like easy to implement, not this retinal stuff and mobile in your pocket VR headsets, that's got to be like a huge jump right there.
Well, there's two types of people. There's people who like high dynamic range video and want to see that implemented in a way where you can really enhance the VR experience. And there's people who like proprietary standards where they charge the content providers and the hardware manufacturers to use.
Oh, crap. I did not know that.
And there have actually been a lot of similar things to Dolby Vision. There's a lot of professional reference grade video displays that have used large backlight grids and selectively lighting certain parts of the display, and they do allow you to get. It's super cool, to have have a sun that's as bright as the sun, and then have blacks that are as black as night. I've actually experimented a little bit using dual DLP projectors it was in a rear projected head-mounted display. Well, not head-mounted, it's more like a box on a table display. But you could do some really cool stuff and reproduce the brightness of fireworks and then still have the blackness of the night sky. I think tech like Dolby Vision is going to be really exciting. I don't know exactly where their particular implementation is going to go, but yeah, I just wanted to push my ideals on everyone. But I'd say yes, that would be really exciting. It's going to be tricky because power consumption is important for virtual reality because you're dissipating heat that is directly on your face. If you read about Dolby Vision or a lot of these references, Dolby Vision in particular, they're using liquid cooling on a huge grid of LEDs to try and dissipate that. The nice thing about VR is that you don't have you have a much smaller display, but if you're trying to get similar light output from that display, you're pushing a lot of light through a very small area that's mounted to your head and potentially powering itself off a battery once we get to mobile headsets. It's a really tricky thing. It'd be hard to get, sun level luminance out of a virtual reality headset. You guys want to add into that?
I've got another question. Ready?
Yeah. From Twitter.
Yeah, from Twitter. So at Ashok0 or Ashoko asks, have you given any thought to making the CK1 cables, CK1, I was assuming he's saying the consumer headset, cables between the headset and the control box detachable, parentheses, cables tend to get frayed?
I'll take that one. Absolutely. We have gotten a ton of great feedback from our community on the control box and the current captive cable and the DK1. We're doing a lot of work to try to make that take to the next level for what people would like to see in a consumer product or a kind of a high-end device. And we know both for kind of a reliability and portability and maybe even hackability that a removable cable is a great benefit. So we're doing a lot of research in that area.
Let's do another one from the audience.
Definitely. So we've got, I think, about 5 minutes.
We're going to move really fast.
Questions.
So move fast, talk fast, and loud.
Hello. Hi.
Yes.
You guys were mentioning how the Oculus could be used in the classroom. Have you guys seen any educators use the development kit in the classroom yet?
Yes.
Yes. So, I'll try to answer as fast as I can. There is an educator. So a bunch of people are doing it. There is an educator, Matthew something. Ben Kuchera has covered him. He is in Australia, and he's helping teach autistic kids using the Rift. So there's a bunch of educators doing it. If you search on our development forums for education type stuff, there's a bunch of people talking about it. Like we said, it's one of the coolest spots where people are innovating.
There's a dolphin classroom out there, right?
Yeah,
there is.
Classroom Aquatic.
Classroom Aquatic. You'll be cheating on a test. So.
You're a dolphin, and you're cheating off other dolphin tests.
But you can go check that out too.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what's the plan of action to encourage more big budget studios to use VR rather than relying on indie or kind of a homebrew scene to show VR, like Obsidian or something like that, like actual big AAA title development companies?
Your support. No, I think...
it's all about the money.
So, we announced that we are publishing games, working with a couple studios already announced. Like we announced we're co-publishing Eve Valkyrie, which is a made-for-VR title, and we're co-publishing that on the Rift with CCP.
A few other that aren't announced.
Yes. So we are co-publishing titles. I think that is the biggest thing that we can do. I think the other big thing is for you guys to show your support. Generally, when we go to a developer and we say, hey, we're building this crazy VR device called the Oculus Rift and it takes people to a whole new world, the teams are always super excited about it, especially the designers and the engineers. I mean, VR is something everyone's dreamed about having, and when you can deliver the holodeck, it does feel like the possibilities are endless, right? Pokemon VR, we all want it. So the challenge always becomes, how many users can I sell it to? And if the answer is, well, we have 50,000 developers out there, it's really hard for a AAA studio to make that return. So we're going to keep doing everything we can, and as the Rift comes out, just continue to show your support, and that's really the best way. The bigger the audience is, the faster we'll get great AAA content on the platform.
Also, it is a bit of a double bet. With a normal game, if someone's investing in a game, they're betting that you're going to make a good game and that there's people interested in it. And that's one of the reasons platforms like Kickstarter, like Steam's Greenlight, have been so successful. It allows people to show interest in a game before they necessarily have large investment in the game. And to show that there's people interested in it. But with virtual reality, the investor's betting on two things. They're betting that they're going to be a capable team that makes a great game that people are interested in, and they're betting that virtual reality is going to succeed. And that's a really tricky bet for some people. Some people believe that teams are capable, but they believe they can get people interested in their game. But not everyone believes that virtual reality is a sure bet. And it could be they make a fantastic game and virtual reality doesn't pan out and they lose all their money. And there's people who want to be very careful about that. And that's one of the reasons we're co-publishing, to try and take that risk off some people who want to do things and, trying to make cool things.
But we're pretty bullish that VR is going to change the world, as you can tell.
Next question.
This is a question about storytelling. It's kind of philosophical.
Where are you?
I'm right over here, And it kind of piggybacks on Palmer's assertion about why you meet people in person. It seems to me that culture is now largely being created in kind of a digital, a virtual sense, like everybody's in their Twitter and Skyping with each other and stuff. But our stories and the stories that we really kind of cling to really have to do with physical or, quote, real reality. Down the road, how do you see it panning out when most of our actual cultural experiences are virtual, but yet how are we going to tell stories, or is it just all going to become a feedback loop and we're now telling stories about things that we told stories about previously or made up like Pokemon?
I don't know, man.
Have you guys thought about that at all as you're building this stuff?
I'm not an artist. You can ask the same thing about music. Like, now that people, they can record music and experience it anywhere, not live. What if people just make the same music over and over again? Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But I think that VR is going to allow for a lot of creativity and probably has more flexibility than almost any other medium. So it would stand to reason that we're going to not hit that limit anymore.
I certainly hope not.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to hit that, although it'll be interesting to see, when all our experiences are virtual, what does that mean for the meaningfulness of experiences? What does going to a theme park mean when you can do it every day, all day, for the rest of your life? Not much, probably.
All right, I think we are out of time. I'm getting the cutoff signal. So
One more question. We have time for one more question.
Yeah, there's obviously a massive amount of potential for live action, both for storytelling and for telepresence. I know you guys aren't camera manufacturers, but have you seen, you must have some insight into how we crack the problem of shooting stereoscopic in 360.
There's a lot of people working on that. One of them is sitting in the audience. There's just a number of people working on that technology. There's no easy answer. And it's something that a lot of people are investing in, and we hope we get there sometime very soon.
It's tricky, though, because you can't get positional tracking out of something that you've just recorded using video. But potentially, if you were recording a stereo view and then also scanning the scene, then reprojecting video into a virtual environment, you could get live action recorded that was proper, and you could move around a little bit, get all the things you need for a good VR experience. Probably real-time rendered stuff is going to be, at least in the distant future, what's best. All right, now I guess we're really out of time.
All right, so we will be around the corner over there for a few minutes chatting with you guys. Thank you all for coming. Again, we are hiring, so if you want to work on this stuff with us, oculusvr.com.